Okay, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really tearing open a stack of sources about this confrontation. It didn't just make headlines, it kind of exploded,
Uh,
online and off.
Absolutely. This wasn't just some minor spat. Our sources frame it as a really high stakes face-off live television.
That's right, we've got articles, reports, commentary, all pile of material detailing this intense exchange. It was on the Fox News Hannity stage between White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt and the actor Robert De Niro.
And the sources, they really put you in the room, don't they? It's like a blow-by-blow account.
Yeah, from the moments right before, the cameras rolled through the clash itself,
Yeah,
and then straight into all that chaotic social media fallout.
exactly. So our mission here in this deep dive, it isn't just to recount what happened. We want to really understand what the sources are telling us about it.
Right.
We're going to unpack the specific arguments, maybe some of the tactics used, look at how the public and media reacted.
And maybe see what this whole showdown reveals about, well, modern communication, political fights, maybe even some generational stuff.
Could be. Generational dynamics definitely seem to be part of the story here, according to the sources.
Okay, so get ready to dive deep with us, past the sound bites, get to the core of what really happened here.
Let's paint the picture, the scene. Bright lights, Fox News, Hannity stage. Sources say the audience was buzzing, tense even.
You can almost feel that energy reading the descriptions, can't you?
Oh.
And into this space, these two figures walk out pretty different on the surface anyway.
Couldn't be more different, yeah. On one side, you've got Karoline Leavitt. The sources describe her a 27-year-old White House press secretary, deep blue suit, looking sharp.
And then facing her, Robert De Niro, 81 years old, Hollywood legend, black suit. But the sources make it clear the tension, it wasn't just starting then. De Niro apparently lit the fuse minutes before she even walked out.
Oh, he absolutely did. The sources really emphasize this immediate, kind of provocative statement he made. Steps out and declares, quote, Trump is a disaster and Leavitt is his puppet, right out of the gate.
Wow. So she hasn't even appeared, and bam. Publicly labeled, dismissed by a global star.
Yeah, sets the stage immediately, doesn't it? Really high stakes. You've got this young Trump spokesperson described as fiercely loyal.
Up against this globally recognized, and let's face it, equally fierce anti-Trump voice.
And the sources pick up on the strategic angle for Leavitt, too. This was potentially her chance to, quote, flip the script.
Because De Niro tried to box her in right away. Young loyalist, puppet.
Exactly. And this confrontation, it became her moment maybe to prove she was something else entirely, to push back hard.
Okay, so De Niro makes this very public, very personal opening shot.
Yeah.
What did the sources say about his delivery? How did he, say it?
They describe it as really deliberate. His gaze, cold and sharp, deep voice. He apparently launched straight into attacking Trump first, called him the biggest disaster America has ever seen. Strong words.
And then he zeroes in on Leavitt herself. It wasn't just about Trump.
No, not at all. Very direct. Described her as a Gen Z kid, Trump's newest puppet. Said she was a mouthpiece who knows nothing beyond reading the scripts Trump shoves in her hands. Pretty brutal stuff.
And the sources mentioned he was, using his own persona,
Yeah.
his background.
Yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it? They mention comparisons to Vito Corleone with his gaze, a smirk, using that thick New York accent from Little Italy days. He even drew parallels himself, saying things like he's seen guys like Trump con men, comparing Trump to a real gangster, and then calling Leavitt the gangster's childish lackey.
So he's basically deploying that whole cinematic tough guy image
Yeah.
as a political weapon.
That's exactly how the sources frame it, leveraging decades of that persona, trying to use that association with, toughness and maybe street smarts against her.
It's like method acting for a political debate.
Sort of, yeah. And he got specific with his criticisms of her, too, not just the puppet label.
Right. What else?
Well, he brought up her age, flat out. Said at 27, she hasn't lived enough to know what's going on.
Ouch.
And he even referenced that signal leak incident, remember that? Questioning if her role was down to incompetence or if it was intentional. So digging into past controversies.
And he went after her faith, too.
Ah.
That feels like crossing a line, maybe. Risky.
The sources definitely note that, saying that if she's praying to cover for Trump, even God can't save her. It's, a highly personal jab in a very public fight.
His whole style sounds, theatrical, based on the descriptions.
It really does. Sources talk about him raising his hand like a seasoned stage actor, pointing at the camera, pacing around. voice dropping low, dripping with drama like his Travis Bickle and Taxi Driver he was performing.
Definitely playing to the cameras and the audience.
And he wrapped it all up with this direct challenge to her,
Yeah.
daring her to come out, warning her he doesn't go easy, claiming, quote, "I fought bigger than you my whole life and I've never lost." Setting it up like a boxing match.
Wow. Talk about pressure. And the audience reaction to all this, sources say, instantly divided.
Totally polarized, yeah. Magie supporters apparently whistling, protesting, liberals clapping wildly, laughter, shouts of "Right on, Bobby!" You can imagine the noise. The energy was just off the charts.
So while all that's happening out front, Leavitt is backstage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the sources say she's hearing it all.
Every word. They describe those insults, Gen Z puppet, clueless kid hitting her like daggers. You really get a sense of the intensity reading these accounts.
But the key detail, the sources emphasize this. She didn't tremble.
No. Fists clenched, eyes blazing. She wasn't intimidated, apparently.
And maybe being on Fox News turf, as the sources call it, helped. Give her a bit of home field advantage.
That's what the sources suggest, yeah. It fueled her determination not to let him define her, not to let him win on that stage. It shows that psychological element, right? Taking the hit, but staying focused.
And this is where the preparation comes in. The sources detail this really crucial moment backstage.
Oh, yeah, this is pivotal. This is the behind-the-scenes stuff. She turns to her assistant, asks, "Where's that old Darrow clip?"
Right, the clip. The assistant pulls up that 2016 video, De Niro praising Obama on CNN.
And Leavitt, boom, instantly sees the potential. The sources say she told production, quote, "Send it to production. I want it on screen when I go out."
So this wasn't just a quick retort thought up on stage.
Not at all. This was a planned counterpunch. She heard his attack, knew exactly the ammo she needed, and got it loaded.
Wow, okay. Weapon ready.
Precisely, before she even stepped into the arena.
So she walks out. Sources describe the high heels clicking, the suit, sweeping the room with her gaze before locking on to De Niro, who's still sitting there.
Arms crossed, smirk still intact, according to the description.
And her mindset, the sources are clear on this. She hadn't come to lose, she'd come to destroy.
That determination apparently came through immediately. She grabs the mic, voice rings out, clear, addresses him directly.
And references his own insults right back at him.
Yep. Gen Z puppet, clueless kid. Then says, "You think you can stand there with your 2 Oscars and Goodfellas voice and humiliate me and President Trump? You're wrong." Straight back at him.
And she immediately flips his criticisms.
Right.
Uses the source's descriptions.
She does. Asks if he'd looked at himself lately. Calls him a Hollywood legend living in luxury off new hospitality, starring in flops like the Alto Nights. Labels him an out-of-touch relic who doesn't get the American people.
So she's painting him as the one who's disconnected.
Exactly. But the real turning point, the moment that really flipped the script, according to all the sources, was the clip.
This was the moment.
This was it. She signals production, big screen lights up. There's the 2016 clip, De Niro on CNN praising Obama, saying, "I like how Obama handles things. He's smart. He's got vision."
And then she turns to him. Voice cutting, the sources say.
Like a knife. She says, "That's you praising Obama, the guy Trump beat. So who's the hypocrite here? You ate Trump, but you backed what he fixed. I may be young, but at least I'm not pretending like you."
Oof. That lands hard. Using his own words from the past to paint him as inconsistent now.
It totally undermines his whole attack, reframes him as the pretender he'd just accused her of being.
And she uses that momentum, right,
Yeah.
to push back on the puppet thing, assert her own identity.
Yes, pivots right into it. Says, "I'm here because I believe in what we're doing, making America strong again," then points the finger back. "And you? Who do you represent besides Hollywood elites?"
Draws that contrast.
Clearly. "You live in mansions, open new restaurants while I grew up in New Hampshire in a middle-class family, knowing what Americans need. Who's really out of touch?" She's positioning herself as the voice of, regular Americans versus his elite status.
It's a classic political move, but seems effective here, connecting with the audience.
And dismissing his critiques as coming from someone detached. She also addresses the faith comment calmly.
Yeah, turns that around too.
Turns it into a strength. Says, "I pray for strength. Strength you don't understand because you only play tough on screen. I don't need Oscars to prove myself. I've got the American people behind me." Reframing her faith as genuine strength, not weakness, and contrasting it with his acting.
And then comes what the sources call the knockout line.
Yeah, this is apparently the finisher. Leans forward, voice low but clear, delivers the unedited truth, as the sources put it. "Trump won because the people chose him, not you. I'm not a puppet, I'm a voice for millions.
And then the final blow.
And you're done, Mr. Darrow. The Alto Knights lost $40 million bucks. What standing do you have to talk about success or failure?
Wow, bringing up the Altonites box office numbers. That's specific.
Yeah.
And recent. A direct hit on his professional standing right then.
It's brutal, yeah. A direct attack on his credibility, using a very tangible recent failure to basically say, who are you to judge success? Undermines his authority to criticize Trump or her.
So how did De Niro react? What did the sources say happened to him physically, mentally?
They describe a really visible shift. Gripping his chair, face flushing, hands trembling. That smirk, gone.
Mm-hmm.
Sources say he was clearly unprepared, especially for that line of attack. He tried to retort, apparently, but she just cut him off.
The whole energy in the room must have just flipped.
Completely. The audience reaction during her turn, sources say it was the total opposite of before. Applause, shouts of Karoline, Karoline, even some, neutral people nodding along. The momentum had swung big time.
So he's clearly reeling, but he tries to recover. Tries to get back on offense.
He does try, yeah. Sources describe him shooting up from his chair, pointing, voice trembling a bit, but trying to keep that steely thing going. You think you're so smart, kid. Who do you think you are? That kind of thing.
Going back to his original points, the puppet stuff, her age.
Pretty much, yeah. Pressing on with the puppet angle, her age, the whole Trump is a menace theme. He even tried to justify the Obama clip, saying so what? I can change my mind. I'm not a puppet like her. Trying to brush it off.
But Leavitt stayed calm through all this. That's what the sources suggest.
They do. They describe her counter-retorts as calm, almost smiling faintly, asking him about his reliance on scripts, asking what he prays for after the Alto Knights bombed, just turning it back on him, keeping control while he's getting more agitated.
Which just fuels his frustration, presumably.
Seems like it. According to the sources, his face turned beet red. He started shouting, bringing up his whole career, Little Italy, knew the films, asking what she has. Besides a mouth reading his orders, getting personal again.
And his final moments on stage. How did it end?
The sources paint a picture of him just running out of steam, sounding unconvincing, his voice wavering. There was even some laughter from the audience, reportedly.
Oh, wow.
He ends up dropping the mic, which, usually signifies confidence, but the sources suggest it felt more like frustration here. Glared at her, called her a childish opportunist.
Ouch.
And then this quiet, almost kind of desperate assertion, I'm Robert Darrow, and she's nothing.
That mic drop.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounding like frustration rather than triumph. That really highlights the shift in power dynamics on that stage, doesn't it?
It really does, at least in the way the sources frame that whole event. And the second that happened on stage, boom, social media just ignited.
This is where you see the speed of modern media, right? It's instant.
Absolutely. Sources note Fox News posted the clip immediately, specifically highlighting the Obama clip, followed by her line, "You're done, Mr. Darrow." They grabbed that narrative right away.
And the impact online was tracked by the source.
Oh, yeah. Hashtags like #LevittFeasDarrow and #LevittFeasDarrow just rocketed on X, took over the conversation almost instantly.
And the reaction from conservative and MAGA circles online?
Yeah.
Immediate and massive support for her.
Huge celebration. Sources say they were calling her a new heroine, the comeback queen. Stuff like Gen Z, One Hollywood Zero, a real fighter, total victory lap.
And the sources even give specific examples, memes and stuff.
Yeah, like comments saying, she's 27 and made Darrow tremble. And the memes just flooded in. De Niro red-faced with captions like, when you think you're a Goodfellas gangster but get schooled by Gen Z. Edited clips of him from The Irishman paired with her "You're done" line. The nickname Killer Karoline took off. Lots of posts saying, retire Bob.
Okay, so what about De Niro's side? What were his fans saying online, according to the sources?
Well, there was some defense, naturally, people calling her tactics cheap tricks, praising him as a legend. But according to the sources, a lot of people, even fans, admitted he got smoked.
Really?
Yeah, comments like too sharp, couldn't keep up, humiliated, even he's done. The sources noted that taxi driver meme popping up, you talking to me, yeah, and you lost.
Wow.
Plus, criticism for him mocking her faith and people sharing that Alto Knights clip themselves, calling him a joke. The online judgment, as the sources tracked it, was incredibly swift and pretty brutal.
And De Niro himself tried to push back afterwards.
Sources mentioned his post-show tweet, something like, Karoline Leavitt is arrogant, but Trump's still the biggest danger I didn't lose today. But the replies... Well, one representative MAGA reply noted was just blunt. You lost Bob. Go retire.
Oof.
Even his appearance on CNN the next day where he tried to hit back, the sources described his voice as just lacking vigor, like the air had gone out of it a bit.
It really sounds like that online narrative just set like concrete super fast.
Yeah.
And he couldn't really change it after the fact.
That definitely seems to be the key takeaway from the sources looking at that immediate fallout. The narrative was set, and it was largely against him in that moment.
Okay, so let's step back a bit. Beyond the immediate reactions, how did different media outlets cover this whole thing? What narratives emerged, according to the sources?
Well, as you'd probably expect, the narratives were pretty sharply divided along partisan lines. Fox News, for instance, framed it as Leavitt teaching De Niro a lesson in truth. They hailed her as, like, the future of the conservative movement. The headline might as well have been, "Don't mess with Trump's Gen Z."
Right. And on the other side, liberal outlets like CNN, Daily Beast, MSNBC.
They mostly stuck to their guns, framing her as that talking puppet, called the whole thing a staged stunt, said she was clearly well-trained, but still just echoing Trump, who they, continued to frame as the real danger.
But what's interesting, the sources suggest even her critics acknowledged her performance in that moment, right?
Yeah.
Her effectiveness.
Yeah, that's a key point the sources highlight from media critics. Even outlets or commentators who clearly didn't like her message had to acknowledge her savvy. They said De Niro underestimated her, called the Obama clip a perfect hit, and recognized she now had this massive spotlight conservatives will milk dry. So regardless of political leanings, there was a kind of grudging respect for the tactical execution.
And what about the impact on Karoline Leavitt herself? Her standing within the party, her public image?
Yeah.
What did the sources say changed?
Oh, significantly. According to the reporting, she pretty much instantly became a new conservative icon.
The win was apparently celebrated inside the White House.
Big time. Trump's tweet calling her fantastic, saying he was very proud. The sources note that cemented her place in his inner circle. Even advisors reportedly admitted her skill after seeing that.
There was that quote.
Yeah, one insider quote captured in the sources was something like, "She didn't just survive, she crushed him on home turf." And this apparently translated into real confidence. Sources mention her handling later White House briefings differently, saying things like, "I faced Niro, these questions don't faze me."
She got branded the Gen Z star of MAGA pretty quickly.
Yep. Figures like Charlie Kirk were calling her the future youth faith and fearless. Breitbart said she did what veteran politicians wouldn't dare.
And that Killer Caroline nickname, that online persona, it became symbolic.
It really did. The sources suggest it turned her into this icon for a new conservative generation, one seen as able to effectively fight and win on the media battlefield.
And her youth, which De Niro attacked.
She flipped it, used the Gen Z puppet insult in that old clip to turn his attack on its head. Her youth became leverage, not a flaw. And her faith, which he mocked, was reframed as a source of strength and a connection point for millions.
Okay, so what about the flip side? The impact on Robert De Niro.
Well, the sources describe this as a pretty significant blow, a rare reputation shock, a major dent in his public image, is how some put it.
Framed as maybe representing a fading era.
Yeah, kind of out of step with the new pace of these media battles. The core argument in the sources is that he fundamentally underestimated his younger opponent. He seemed to think his experience and fame would just automatically crush her youth.
And his own attacks, like bringing up Alto Nights. They backfired.
According to the sources, yeah. His attempts to hit back just seemed to fluster him more and maybe exposed his disconnect, as one source put it, to a modern audience.
And that jab about her faith seems like a clear misstep from the reaction.
That's definitely the framing. That he overreached, looked like a bully, and Leavitt made him pay for it. Now, his legacy isn't erased, obviously. Right. Sources note he still has 2 Oscars new and fans. But this specific clash, it left a big scratch. It suggested that maybe that old Hollywood sway is waning, especially when faced with a prepared, younger opponent who knows how to work the current media landscape.
It really raised questions about his effectiveness in this kind of fight, didn't it?
It did. Is he still that potent anti-Trump voice he was seen as? The sources say some people, even fans, were suggesting maybe he should just stick to films after this.
So if we zoom out, look at this whole confrontation through the lens of all these sources. What are the bigger picture takeaways? What does it tell us?
Well, the sources really connected to these broader themes playing out in America, that stark polarization we see everywhere, and maybe evidence of shifting power dynamics.
And it's just such a vivid example of the power of media, right?
Yeah.
Especially social media, how quickly perceptions of truth and influence can be shaped.
Absolutely. And you'd Definitely see that generational clash, youth versus experience, Gen Z versus boomer, playing out really dramatically on a national stage.
It also underscores how critical narrative control has become. The sources suggest whoever owns the story on X or TikTok in those first few hours holds tremendous power.
And this whole incident, as detailed in the sources, it offers some pretty stark real-life lessons, doesn't it?
Like what?
Like never underestimate your opponent, ever. Always have your own information, your own ammo, ready to go. Use facts strategically, like weapons. And you have to define your own story, or someone else will define it for you.
It really seems to boil down to Leavitt winning because she was prepared, strategic. She had a plan.
Right. While De Niro, despite all his fame and experience, stumbled because of, well, maybe overconfidence, and definitely being unprepared for her specific counterattack.
The sources seem to conclude that power in these modern fights isn't just about age or your resume anymore.
Increasingly, it seems to be about readiness, about strategic thinking, and about knowing how to leverage the tools of whatever the current media environment is. Smarts and preparation count for a lot.
So, wrapping this up,
Hmm.
what did this deep dive into the Karoline Leavitt versus Robert De Niro confrontation really show us, based on everything we've looked at in the sources?
Well, we saw a very deliberate, planned attack, met with an equally calculated, maybe even more meticulously planned counterattack, delivered with a lot of confidence.
We saw that instant viral explosion online, just how fast narratives get shaped, amplified, and sometimes cemented.
And we explored how just one single public clash could have these really profound impacts on the public images, the political standing of both people involved.
Yeah, it's clear this wasn't just, a few minutes of TV. It was like a concentrated dose of modern politics, generational conflict, media dynamics, all playing out right there.
And maybe the key question for you, the listener, thinking about all this, is how much these lessons about being prepared, using information strategically, controlling your own narrative, how much do they apply outside of just politics? In a world where perception can change instantly because of one clip, one hashtag, what does that mean for any situation where influence is being fought over, gained, or lost?
Definitely something to think about the next time you see one of these moments blow up in the news.